So Bitcoin is pulling back again. And once more, people are asking if something is broken. But when you zoom out and actually study the structure, Bitcoin is doing exactly what it has done every cycle before continuation. We have a strong move higher, pull back into a controlled drawdown, and then continuation from the demand. And right now, Bitcoin is sitting right inside those demand territories once again. Now, before we dive deeper into the charts, let's head over to today's macro news because the backdrop is quietly constructive. Japanese Bitcoin treasury company Metaplanet launches new ADR trading on Deutsche Bank Trust Company Americas under the ticker MPJPY. This is Bitcoin exposure moving deeper into global capital markets and is another sign that institutional access keeps on expanding, not contracting. Now, markets have rebounded after BOJ hike. So after the Bank of Japan's hike, Bitcoin moved higher despite the Bank of Japan's rate hike, joining US stocks futures in a bullish risk asset response as markets price in no further policy tightening. And this matters a lot because it shows that Bitcoin is behaving like a resilient risk asset even as markets price in no further tightening. This is strength during macro stress, which is usually not bearish. And on top of that, today, over $3.1 billion worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum options expire. This often brings short-term volatility and noise, but it does not change higher time frame structure. And keep that in mind as we look at the charts, because structure matters more than expirational day moves. So we'll begin with the charts and looking at the weekly time frame, where Bitcoin continues to follow a very familiar bull market rhythm. And this is where we currently see strong expansion higher, a healthy drawdown, and then continuation of the trend. Once again, we have a healthy drawdown, continuation of the trend. And it's been a repeat scenario for Bitcoin throughout the whole of this cycle. Now, removing all of the drawings and looking at indicators and the correlation of marking a local low before the continuation of a new pump, Bitcoin's MACD on the weekly time frame has been printing golden crosses on every drawback occasion. Now, every time this signal prints in relation to the price, when it's back down at a potential low, this is where we see Bitcoin start to begin rallies to new higher highs and expansion back above the previous levels of resistance. So we had this level of resistance in 2024. Bitcoin was coiling between a level of resistance and support for multi-months. It came back to a low. We formed the golden cross on the MACD, and this is where we started the next expansion to the higher high. And it's been this way ever since the first golden cross formed in 2023, and every single cross has marked the local low with price action before the expansion higher. Will this time be any different? If not, the rocket ship could be loading. And right now we are back down in the territory where we've had a 36% dump, leading us to believe that we are likely to experience a pump in the coming weeks. So at this moment in time, we are currently inside the actual drawdown phase. And historically, this is where Bitcoin resets before moving higher once again. Nothing here looks like distribution. It literally looks like cycle repetition based on the previous rhythmal structure. Now, zooming out to the monthly time frame, and this is where things really line up. Bitcoin is sitting inside a clear monthly demand zone. And at the same time, the long-term rising trend line is actually being respected. You can see we've had multiple points of contact on this trend line since 2023 before continuing the macro wave higher. Now, it has been painful and Bitcoin is down 36% roughly, but it still respects this trend line and currently sits in the monthly support, which is the lows from April of 2025 in the $80,000 territory. This isn't random. This is monthly demand and trendline support showing strong markets defend the structure, especially when macro conditions are not deteriorating. So even being zoomed out to the monthly time frame, nothing has been broken. Bitcoin is still printing higher highs and higher lows, respecting the trend line. This is a pullback, not a reversal. It's the process of forming the next higher low, you could say. And we're sitting right on the respected trend line inside multi-month support, which leads us on to the daily time frame. This is where we zoom into the lower time frames and analyze internal price action. once again, we have this major demand zone, which currently sits at the lows from late November that Bitcoin's been holding for over, well, really and truly nearly a month. And every time we've entered into this demand zone territory, this is where Bitcoin is seeing massive rallies of relief and technically starts running back into its supply zone. Now, the supply zone above sits at $95,000. Roughly. And this is the sort of territory that we like to see Bitcoin see relief. And, this ties in again with the Bank of Japan rate hikes. A lot of people were expecting the price to see a massive drawdown, but we've done the opposite, which may already signal that we're priced in. And Bitcoin does have the opportunity here for the bulls to step in and start pushing back up once again into the supply zone, which sits at $95,000. And this still signifies that this is a pullback and not a reversal. Bitcoin is in the process of forming that higher low structure, and we just need to give it the time it needs to find its footing. Now, let's zoom in even more. We'll go to the 4-hour time frame because the buyers are clearly active. Bitcoin has tapped the 4-hour demand zone multiple times, and each time price has been defended in this territory, which tells us selling pressure is being absorbed, which is typically during accumulation and not a breakdown. The main objective for the bulls at this phase is to start reclaiming the previous trend line that was actually lost to support and imminently running back into the supply zone. So this white trend line here, let's just make this black so it's a little bit more clear. You can see that this was a previous level of support for Bitcoin, and it was running up in this trend back into supply before coming back down to the trend line where we initially lost it on the 14th or 15th of December, and now we've confirmed it as resistance, pulled back into demand, and this has given the opportunity for the bulls to step in. So it's all about reclaiming this trend line, back testing it for support, and then pushing up into supply when it comes to the 4-hour time frame. There is work to do, but tapping back in this demand zone territory in the past throughout December has always historically marked a relief rally for Bitcoin. Now, it initially tells us again that selling pressure is being absorbed, and this is a typical sign of accumulation before continuation and not a structural breakdown. Looking at our last chart of the day, the 2-hour time frame. Now the setup here becomes even more clear. We have a demand zone respected multiple times on critical support. We have the lows from back in I think it was on the 1st of December actually. And this is where we've seen multiple POCs in this territory, and Bitcoin has seen those relief rallies. So this isn't something unfamiliar. This is just simple structure being caught between a key level of resistance and support in demand and supply. And right now we've had 3 POCs in the demand zone, and it looks like Bitcoin is once again pushing back up into resistance levels above. We have 90K that the bulls need to reclaim, and we also have the 93 or 92K territory above on these previous highs from the 12th of December. And if we could start reclaiming these levels, then the pathway is set to initially get the push back for Bitcoin back into that supply at roughly $94,000. And this is where we've had multiple points of contact in similar territory over the last month or two. Very interesting times, and the bulls must step in. Look, the markets don't stay compressed forever. They usually move towards liquidity, and once demand holds, this is where we have the liquidity pockets above, which we could push into. So when you put this all together, right, the weekly is repeating cycle after drawdown before pushing higher. The monthly has tapped a key demand zone, and the trend line for the last couple of years is ultimately being respected. This signifies growing demand and holding key structure. The daily time frame evidently shows that Bitcoin is in the midst of forming a potential bottom between supply and demand, and the lower time frames signal compression, but just understand that this does not last forever. The demand is being defended repeatedly, and macro institutional access is expanding. There is resilience after the Bank of Japan's rate hikes, and Bitcoin's actually seeing relief, which signifies that it might already be priced in. And this doesn't look like weakness. It generally looks like compression before expansion. As always, just respect the structure, ignore the noise, and let price confirm the next move. Now, if you do want to support the channel, the links below are there for you. You can trade on the platform we use every day, get fee discounts and bonuses. It's completely optional, but it really helps the channel grow. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next update.